Whisk away your heart silent, bury it in mine.
I would like to thank you for watching these videos. We finally done it. We've finally come to the last part of the theory of English. Hooray. We've done spoken speech. We've done written speech. Now, all we need to do is we need to put them into forms. And we also need to know how to improve. So what do I mean by forms? I mean things like plays. I mean things like essays. I mean short stories. I mean novels. I mean magazines. I mean any form of English where we take that written speech and we do things with them that people enjoy, that are informative, that are entertaining. This is the practical side of it, really. How can we use English? Sound interesting? Should be. Let's get into it. Okay, so if you've been watching up to the third section, we ended here with punctuation. And now that we've done punctuation, we know how to take that spoken speech and to put it into written speech. We know how to make our written speech accessible. So really, we know how to communicate. Let's go over here and have a quick summary. We start with our types of words. Nouns, verbs, adjectives, adverbs, pronouns, prepositions, interjections, and conjunctions. Types of words. Every word is a type. We add correct punctuation to them for them to make sense in the sentence. We have to fulfill the function of a clause. Okay, remember the functions? You're either independent or you're dependent. You remember these? Subject, verb, object, indirect object, and modifier put into 5 different forms. Subject, verb, modifier, subject, verb, object, etc., etc. We fulfill the function of a clause. We have to get the right sentence type. Remember those? Simple, compound, complex, compound, complex. And once we've done that, we have comprehension. We have comprehensible meaning. You know, we can say things now. I don't know, maybe it's exciting just for me. I find this incredibly exciting. However, people do funny things with sentences all the time, okay? And those funny things that they do with sentences, those weird and arbitrary structures that they use, we call them forms. Forms for me are conventional use, okay? So let's jump with this line all the way up to here. A form is convention and technique. Convention and technique. Conventions are accepted standards. Take a play. A play uses stage directions. Let's count 5. Stage directions, characters, dialogue, plot, costumes. That's just 5. But there may well be 20, 30 different conventions that people can use. And technique, the craft of writing, you know? The word choice, the vocabulary, the tone, the style, your technique. You combine your convention with your technique, and you have a different form, okay? For me, there are 2 types of forms. You have your explicit forms, and you have your implicit forms. So what does this mean? Explicit, implicit. Remember, a form's main function is to just transmit that information, just like a sentence, transmit that information by different means. What are these means? You can do it explicitly, you can do it implicitly. Explicit means straightforward. You are very straightforwardly, clearly trying to demonstrate information. You want me to give an example of this? Non-fiction is explicit. So for example, you read a biography of somebody. You're going through their life, and the biography is telling you that this is what happened to the person on this day. This is what they thought about that. This is how they reacted. This is what that person did to them. It's explicit. It's just coming out and saying, this is what happened. This is how it works. Try this. Essays are explicit. When you write an essay, you have a structure: introduction, paragraph, conclusion. You're also trying to say something, okay? You do it explicitly. You want to say that that this is not ethical, you come out and say it. This is not ethical. We shouldn't do this. That is one type of way that people can get information across. It's usually written in prose. Clear, upfront language. To be contrasted with fiction. So remember, non-fiction, fiction. You know what fiction is? It's when you make stuff up, you know, make stories up, you make plays up. Movies, mostly fiction. Your science fiction, your fantasy, whatever. All of that is mostly just fiction. But we can still get information across. Remember, we're trying to get information across. We can do it explicitly, which is where we just come out and say it, or we can do it implicitly, right? So, let's take a movie, okay? Okay, let's take The Truman Show. Have you ever seen The Truman Show? Have you ever seen The Truman Show? Sorry, I think it's better if you look at me when I do this. The Truman Show is basically this movie about a guy that has his whole life controlled for him. But in the movie, the main character Truman finds out that it's more satisfying to live life without somebody controlling your life. And in that we learn themes like the importance of living a genuine life, and the importance of making your own decisions and not having other people make decisions for you, and the importance of crafting your own identity. But you see all of this, so those are ideas that we could have written in an essay, right? We could have just said it like straightforwardly. This is what I think the importance of identity is, and this is what we should do about choice making and that kind of thing. However, we don't do that. We watch a movie, we see this guy go through it, we see how the movie resolves itself, and through that we are making up these ideas, right? So if we come back to here, you have your implicit, you have your explicit. Your implicit, what does implicit mean? If explicit was to just come out and say it, implicit was to imply it. So remember Truman Show. In the Truman Show, all this stuff happens to Truman. But because all that stuff happens to him, it's implied that the major themes of the movie is identity, is belonging, is genuine life, is choices, is etc., whatever. But all that information is implied, okay? So I just have, oh, and by the way, written speech, mostly done in verse, okay? So you have prose, here you have verse. Verse is when you are using metaphor in your speech, okay? You know what metaphor is? It's when you take one thing to be another. Verse is basically the employment of metaphor in speech. Prose is just explicit. I gave some examples. You have your short stories, okay? And with your short stories, we're trying to transmit information. We can't do it explicitly, so we try to imply those ideas through our characters, our plot, our environment, our title, our mood, our style of writing, our time, our technique, the lucidity of it, or the illusion of stability. So that's how we can do it with a short story. A character might talk to another character and say something, etc. But that's one type of transmitting information. But what about our essay? How do we transmit information explicitly through our essay? We can do it through the introduction. We can do it in the paragraphs. We can do it in the conclusion. We can look at the topic, the question. We can look at the contention, which is what you're trying to say. And we can also use arguments as justifications for your essay. Alright? So, those are our forms. And what I wanted to do now is that, well, congratulations, you've done it. That's basically it. Once you've reached this stage, this is where every writer in the world is at. However, we don't just stay there. You have different degrees. How do you differentiate between a good writer, a bad writer? Well, you have to look at their use of convention, their use of technique, but you also have to look at how much they practice. And this is how I practice. So, with all the writers, they develop a style, okay? A particular way in which they write, okay? To improve the style, I have a couple of tips. Firstly, get your grammar and punctuation right. You don't have this right, you're not gonna write well. The end. Not too much to say about that. 2. Master the conventions of your form. You're gonna write a short story? Write in the conventions of a short story. Okay? 3. Copy the voice of great writers. Look at the people who came before you and copy them. Nothing, no shame in it. They're great writers. But you're trying to craft your own style by taking some tips and tricks from the people who came before you. 4. What do we have here? Literary finesse through the mastery of technique. What that basically means is try to write your sentences elegantly. I'll have a video about this in the future, but try to write your sentences with clarity, but also with mystery. Okay? That for me captures technique. Alright? But the golden rule is this. Oh, look at that, we're back at letters. The golden rule is this. Read, write, and practice. Read, write are types of practice. And that is English. Well, that's it. That's my theory of English. I did that. I wrote it up in maybe 2 hours. But I prepared for it for about 2 years. I think that's it. There's definitely more to it. Or I know, Jackson, if you're watching this, I know there's so much more to it. Graphemes, I don't know what else. But those are the main things, at least. And if you did watch all the way here, I would like to thank you for doing so. It actually means a lot to me. And yeah, I'll see you on another video. So if you like this one, remember to like, comment, and subscribe. And see you around.